Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we will explore Nmap, Network Mapper, which is an essential tool for network reconnaissance and security auditing. We'll go step by step, explaining each command and running them in our Cal Linux terminal. The target IP in this scenario will be 192.168.162.129. Before we begin, I want to make it clear that all the demonstrations in this video are conducted in a controlled, isolated environment using virtual machines. The tools and techniques shown here are intended for educational purposes only, to help you understand network scanning and security testing within a legally authorized lab setup. Unauthorized scanning or testing against real-world systems, corporate networks, or public infrastructure without explicit permission is illegal and could lead to serious legal consequences. I take no responsibility for any misuse of this information. Please ensure that you only practice in a safe environment, such as a home lab, test network, or ethical hacking sandbox. If you are a cybersecurity professional, always follow proper authorization protocols before conducting any network assessments. Now with that said, let's get our Cal Linux terminal ready and start testing some commands. Let's perform a basic scan. This is the most basic form of the Nmap scanning. Simply I'll do Nmap followed by the target IP address. What this command will do, it will scan the most common 1000 ports on the target machine. If the host is live, then Nmap will retain the list of open and closed ports. If the host is down, you may need to use other options that will be covered later in this tutorial. So first, if I hit enter, let's see how the output looks like. So it did scan the most common 1000 ports. 976 of these ports are closed, the TCP ports, and it's showing the other ports which are open. We have the FTP, SSH, Telnet, SMTP, the HTTP is there, and we have many other ports which are open. So this provides in its basic form some information about the detected services in very basic form. So that's how the basic Nmap works. Now, instead of scanning all ports, we can specify a single port like port 80, for example, the HTTP. To do so, we are here using the command nmap, still the same, but I will use the option to specify the port I want, and that's the dash P followed by the port number. In this case, I'm trying the port 80, and then the target IP address 192.168.162.129. This is the IP address of the target machine in this setup. So now if I hit enter, instead of scanning all the ports, I'm just scanning for HTTP port 80, and simply the output is port 80 is open. You can scan multiple ports as well. So for that option, let me always clear so you can start on top of the screen. I'll use the same command nmap-p, but this time I can use commas to separate the ports. So I'm scanning port 80, 22, and then I want to HTTPS 443 followed by the target IP address. Now I'm scanning multiple ports. So this will scan port 80 HTTP, port 22 for SSH, and port 443 for HTTPS. Let's have a look at the output. Here we go. These are the ports I have checked just right now. We have two open ports, which are SSH HTTP and HTTPS. Port 443 is closed. So that's how we can specify multiple ports. And one last thing I will show here, which is scanning all the ports. So if I want to scan all the 65,503 ports, which takes longer but provides full visibility, I will use one option. Let me clear before I try it, which I will do what the same command. This time I don't need really to type the ports. All I need to add is a dash after the P. So dash P dash and then the target IP address. This will scan all the ports. Now we'll leave it running, and you will notice that it takes longer time because I'm scanning really huge number of ports, 65,535 ports. And out of this, this is the number of closed TCP ports, which are 65,505 are closed. The remaining ones are open, and here we can see the full list. Nmap Nmap supports different scan types based on how it interacts with the target. Let's start with the SYN scan, the stealth scan. For this scan, I'll do Nmap. Let me type it from scratch, and then I'll use the scan type is S. That means I'm using a SYN scan, the stealth scan, followed by the target IP address 192.168.162.129. And then I'll hit enter. So this will do stealth scan. What that means when I choose the scan type S, that means it's doing a SYN scan. This will not complete the TCP three-way handshake. This what makes it less detectable. So I want to evade detection when I scan the target. So I'll use a SYN scan which doesn't complete the TCP three-way handshake. And on the other hand, there is another way. If you don't want to do the stealth scan, you can do the TCP connect scan, which is more detectable than the SYN scan, but works when the SYN scans fail. So if the SYN scan fails and you didn't get the results, then here you need to go for a complete TCP three-way handshake. And I will demonstrate this. Let me just clear so we can start on top. And for that, I'll do Nmap. And this time the scan type, so the lowercase s is for scan type, followed by the type, and in this case is T. So in the previous command, we did S for the SYN scan. For TCP full scan, we use T uppercase, and then followed by the target IP address. And this will be a full TCP scan. This will complete the three-way handshake. This makes it more detectable than the SYN scan. But again, we're trying to find an open door to get through to the target. So that's why we need to try different scan options until we get the results we want. Again, we're doing this in isolated environment using VMs. We are testing our security controls because if we can do it, then the attackers can do it. So we need to see what ports we have open, and then we put some countermeasures by closing or disabling these ports, which are not really required to for our network and our network or system. And also we can use UDP scans. So UDP scans, which take longer than TCP scans, but again, there are some UDP based services like DNS, SNMP, and many others. So here you might use options to scan for UDP, and in that case, I'll just simply use -S. So the scan type is U, meaning this is a UDP scan, and then I will be able to see what UDP-based services are open or available on the target machine. Looking at the output, it takes longer than TCP scan. Let's wait for a bit and see what the result will look like so we can discuss it together. Maybe there are no UDP services running on the target machine. That's why it's taking forever. But let's see. Usually it shouldn't take longer than this. I'll do Ctrl C just to stop this scan because it's taking longer than expected. Probably there are no UDP services running on the target, so let me do Ctrl C and stop the scan. Nmap can identify the running services and their versions. To do so, I'll do Nmap followed by the target IP address, but here what I'll add one option, which is the -SV, the V representing the version. So we'll try to guess the service running on each open port. It's useful for enumeration before exploitation. So if I hit enter, and let's see how the output looks like. So it's scanning now the target machine, and will provide the list of the open ports. And this time we'll try to guess the service running on each open port. It took a while, but eventually we got what we are after. So here we got 976 ports out of the common 1000 are closed, and these are the open ports, and we can see now the version of every service running on these ports. So this is the version for FTP. For SSH, it's using OpenSSH 4.7, Telnet, Linux, Telnet D, and so forth. So this is the service version. Simply, we just added the -SV to guess the service running on each open port. That's not only the option for Nmap. There are many other options. One of them I'll try now, which is the -O. The -O which is an uppercase O. This dash O will attempt to identify the operating system based on the TCP IP behavior. Let's hit enter and see if it's getting it. Yes, at the bottom, after it displays all the open ports, we can see that the operating system details is Linux 2.6.9 to 2.6.33. So this is an indication about the operating system running on the target machine, which is really handy information for the attackers. Again, for us, we are the ethical hackers, we are the pen testers, so we are assessing our security by identifying what vulnerabilities we have on the system, and this is one of them, being able to scan and to guess the operating system on the target machine. Then we need to look into some countermeasures to implement on our network to prevent this. Firewalls often block basic scans, so we need evasive techniques. We need to evade being detected by a firewall. So that's why I'll use one of the options with the Nmap, which allows us to scan without ping. So Nmap, and this is what I have mentioned earlier when we did the basic scan, and this is the dash pn followed by the IP address of the target, the 168, the 162, the 129. This is the target IP address of the target one machine I'm using in this scenario. So Nmap, I did misspell Nmap. Let me fix this before I proceed. So it's Nmap dash pn. What that means, I'm scanning without ping. So the dash pn here will disable ping checks, assuming the host is alive. So I'm not checking if the host is alive, if it's reachable. I'm assuming it's alive, it's reachable. So this is really useful when ICMP ping is blocked by firewalls, because one of the security measures is to block ICMP pings by a firewall. So if that's the case on the target side, then I need to evade this by trying this nmap command by disabling the ping checks, so it won't be detected. So now I'll hit enter, and here I can see a list of open ports. So it did work. It did provide me the list of open ports. Another scan I'll try here in this context, if I clear again, is the Nmap, but this time is the dash SA. So the scan type is AG scan, helps detect firewalls as well. So here I'm trying to guess what is the architecture at the target end. I want to guess if they are using firewalls or not. So I'll do an AG scan. No response, that means it's likely a filtered port. And if it replies with a reset packet, likely it's an unfiltered port. So let's see in this case what we have. So I have 1000 unfiltered TCP ports. So that's where we get a reset packet indicating that these are not filtered port. So I'm guessing now the architecture at the target end. So it responded by a reset packet for the ACK scan. That's indicative that there is no firewall because these are unfiltered. On the other hand, if we get no response, that will mean what? Will mean that there is likely a filtered port. Let's try to do now some advanced scans and techniques. Let's start with the aggressive scanning. So now what I will do, I'll do Nmap, but this time I'm not specifying the scan type. I'm doing dash A straight away. So that's doing an aggressive scanning. The dash A combines OS detection, service detection, and trace route. Very noisy, will alert intrusion detection systems at the target end, but this will get you really good information. So I'm doing an aggressive scanning. Let's run it and see what the output will look like. It will take some time because, yes, I'm doing OS detection, service detection, and trace route. So it might take quite a bit, but it's worth it, right? Again, we are pen testers, ethical hackers, but always think from the attacker's perspective, those bad guys who want to scan the network, so they have nothing other than the time to spend until they get some handy information. So here where we can see the list of all the details, here you can see the operating system, and then if I scroll up, we can see the services running on each port in details with the version of each. So that's an aggressive scan that we have just performed, and it did provide really detailed insights about the services running on certain ports with some extra details. that are handy for attackers. For us, are handy as well because we are able to identify existing vulnerabilities so we can implement the required security countermeasures. Now I'll conclude by scanning a network range. Actually, if we are thinking from the attacker perspective, they have no insight about the network hosts, which ones are alive, which ones are not. So what they need to do usually, they need to scan the network first, so they identify the the hosts on that network. And then these hosts will become the potential targets and they will perform all these scans that we have already demonstrated in this tutorial. To do a network scan or a scan for a network range, we do the Nmap as usual. And then I'll add this time the n-sn. And then I'll do 192.168. This is my target. That's the IP address, and this is the slash 24. The slash 24 at the end because I'm scanning class C network, so the first 24 bits represents the network component and the last 8 bits represent the host. So this will scan the network 192.168.162 for any hosts which are alive on the network. So this will be my potential targets. The -SN in this scenario disables port scanning, only detects live hosts, so it will not do port scanning. If you want to scan the network at the same time you want to do port scanning, then you don't have to include the -SN. But to speed up the process, I'll just add the -SN, so I will disable the port scanning so I can only detect the live hosts. And this will scan the entire network, the .162.1 up to 255. So let's have a look how the output looks like. It's scanning the network out of the all the devices or the hosts in this network from 1 to 255. We have the .1, .2, .129, .254, and the .128. These are the hosts which are up and running. So I have 5 hosts up and the remaining are not. So these are my potential targets. Alrighty, so this concludes the Nmap tutorial, which what we covered in this video. Remember, Nmap is really an essential tool in penetration testing and network diagnostics. I highly encourage you to trial this in your isolated environment using the virtual machines you have set up already. And please don't forget to subscribe for more hands-on cybersecurity tutorials. See you in the next video.